the great library of Izdark, capital of Azirak, Winterdom. Elf Librarian Ezina Mesrelin scooted books through the air using a sorting breeze spell. Tomes lifted themselves from her cart, which she pushed down the center of the library aisle. The books floated upwards and outwards toward either side of her, finding their place on shelves which soared 3 stories high. Overhead, Gothic arches created a peaked and vaulted ceiling higher still. Spheres of light bobbed beneath the gracious arches, illuminating the pillars and shelves like crystal. Like most structures in Izdark, the capital of the winter elvish realm of Azirak, the bones of the library were iron, but the sinews were ice and snow, frozen solid with elemental wind magic. Ice architecture allowed for the most delicate lattices, Baroque arabesques, and dripping tassels of ornamentation. Even without the books and their repository of magic, Ezina would have loved the great library for its sheer beauty, delicacy, and grandeur. Walking within the arched halls was like exploring the inside of a sapphire. The books upon their shelves added stripes of color and an earthy, musty smell to the silvery ice. These constituted the living heart of the library. Every volume in the great library contained magic, some light, some dark, some somnolent, and some so effervescent that musings escaped the books and fluttered around like bizarre, mutant bats. The musings looked, and sometimes acted, like odd, impossible beast-bird butterflies, but they weren't alive. Not really. No musing looked like any other. They often had wings, or maybe hands, or petals. They might have 2 heads, or none. They might have 3 tails and mouths instead of toes. They formed from the collision of highly concentrated book magic and mind magic. Mostly harmless, they became pests when their numbers grew too great. If that happened, Ezina and the other librarians would have to hunt them down and squish them into cages to take outside the library walls. There, without enough imagination to sustain their precarious dream state existence, they would evaporate. She didn't enjoy such hunts. Crushing the musings felt wrong, akin to killing, though not identical. Long before Ezina's time, excess musings had been sent through the door of dreams to eliminate them, but that door had been sealed, then hidden, then lost. Indeed, now the door of dreams was often called by a new name, the lost door. Since the lost door led into the void between worlds, Ezina wasn't sure if that had been more kind or more cruel. Thinking about musings empowered them. A musing grappled one of the books Ezina had sent floating toward its home on the shelf. This musing was the size of a dove, but shaped like a winged, headless mermaid. It had a sinuous fishtail, a torso sprouting tiny arms, but a bouquet of roses where its head should have been. It tried to wrestle the book into the upper eaves of the library. Laughing at its antics, Ezina wagged her finger. Ezina zapped the musing with a chilly gust, careful not to overdo the power of elemental wind in her spell. That would freeze the musing into brittle ice. The musing squeaked, shed petals, and released the book. As soon as it let go, the musing lost interest in the book. The musings had no real goals or purpose, even when they indulged in innocent mischief. Ezina calmly sent a new sorting breeze to ferry the book back into place. Ezina had almost finished emptying her cart when a blast of wind ripped through the library. Even Ezina herself gasped and stumbled. shoved off balance by the fury of the magic gale that hit her. Books still in the air hurtled to the walls and hit the floor. A rain of hail and dust tinkled onto the floor. Horrified, Azina realized that more than a dozen musings had been frozen by the drop in temperature and then dashed to dust on the ground by the fierceness of the blizzard. A patina of hoarfrost covered all the books. Icicles dripped from the shelf edges. Azina recovered from her shakiness, puffing up with anger. "Who did that?" she cried as she hurried from the hall out onto a balcony overlooking the main foyer. Kislin, another librarian, a winter elf like Azina, stood on the balcony, but he turned to Azina and put his finger to his lips. His face, always pale, had blanched bone white. Wordlessly, he pointed over the balcony toward a contingent of mirror knights in white and silver armor who had marched into the foyer. They were armed with swords and guns. With them prowled an equal number of white wolves. Azina's jaw dropped. Fear replaced her anger. Ancient tradition held that the libraries were sacrosanct. Even the ever-warring armies of the factions and kingdoms of Winterdom respected that tradition. But the current regime had no shame. They had dared to send their soldiers into the library itself. The blast of killing wind had not been an error. It had been a warning. The elf at the head of the troop called out in a deep voice, "Who is in charge here? I demand to speak to the head librarian." Lady Udara, head librarian, dressed in a formal, embroidered gown and robe, swept into the foyer. She bowed. "I am in charge. To whom do I have the pleasure of speaking?" Her cold, imperious voice indicated that pleasure must be interpreted liberally. The leader of the troop stepped forward. He did not return her bow or remove his metal helmet, not even to lift his faceplate. A calculated insult. "I am Lord Dul Hismark, and I have been tasked with eliminating prohibited books from this establishment." "We do not harbor prohibited books. We do not even recognize that adjective adjoined to that noun. The purpose of a library is to inform and educate the public," said Lord Dul Hismark. "Yet it has come to the attention of King Bellicus that there are a number of miswritten books here which present inaccurate, inexact, or incendiary information. Surely you, a librarian, do not wish the public to read misleading material. How can lies educate or uplift anyone? Surely you don't wish to allow books to remain on your shelves which encourage mutiny or hostility." Or, he asked slyly, "Do you yourself agree with odious, dangerous opinions?" "Certainly not," she said with quiet dignity. Lord Dul Hismark handed Lady Udara a printed list. "You will locate all of those titles and dump them here in the foyer. My men will then dispose of them." She glanced at the list. Her face pinched tighter. "This list includes historical documents. Surely you cannot mean for us to destroy valuable antiques." "The writ means exactly what it says. All copies of the prohibited books will be gathered here for my men to dispose of. You have no jurisdiction here. "Look at the order, librarian," he said. "The King of Swords himself has issued the order." "Kings have no rights to issue orders here," she insisted. "Our premises are inviolable." "You will find that King Bellicos may violate whatever and whomever he likes," sneered Lord Dual Hismark. "And to ensure your full compliance, I will require each of your librarians to be accompanied by one of my knights as they gather the books." Lady Eudara stood extremely still, neither defying nor complying. From the balcony where she watched the confrontation, Edina ached for her. Lady Eudara risked arrest by angering the king's guard. "If you refuse," Lord Dual Hismark added, sounding almost eager, "then your lower caste staff will be eliminated instead of the books, and after that we shall still find and destroy the lies." Lady Eudara bowed. "As you wish, Lord Hismark. I shall summon my staff." "You have until the end of the day to complete your task," he said. "By sunset, the books will burn."